Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Payroll Spring Clean. So this webinar is going to include some tips and tricks to start the new tax year, including some different tasks which are best to do at the beginning of the tax year. My name's Alice, I'm your host and presenter for the session, and I'm also joined by my colleague Tina, who's going to be helping us out on the Q&A today. So I've got four main sections of the webinar to go through, and the first one is tidying up your employee list. So this is going to be a deeper look at the criteria and outline options in payroll to kind of show and hide certain employees, and then also a look at setting up and managing employee groups. We'll then move on to decluttering your pay elements, so how to tidy up pay elements if you've got loads of different ones that you might not use anymore, you've got some duplicate pay elements, things like that. So tidying up those, making them nice and tidy, and yeah, if they're no longer needed, just the kind of process to delete those. We'll then move on to a new section called New Year, New ... And this is a section all about different things that are best to do at the beginning of the tax year or needed to be done at the beginning of the tax year. So if you do have any directors on your payroll, that is one thing that will need to be done at the beginning of the tax year. And then also different pay frequencies as well. So if you're changing somebody from monthly to weekly, for example, just about kind of how you'll be able to do that too. And then last section is going to be called Looking After Your Data. And this is just how to manage your data, keep it safe and secure, and some different tips to kind of take with you into the new tax year as well. And as always, we will finish with some further support and hopefully a couple of minutes to keep answering your questions too. So let's move on to that first section then, which is all about tidying up your employee list. So using the criteria to change which employees you can see, filtering the employees in the outline, and a look at employee groups as well if that is something that you'd want to set up. So first thing we'll look at is the criteria option, and this is essentially different filters to show and hide certain employees based on their status. So if they're on hold, on holiday, leavers or historical leavers, you can filter it by that, but also by their pay frequency, department, cost centre or payment method. So these criteria settings will filter through to the outline as well, which is something else that we're going to take a look at. And that's actually found to the left-hand side of your employee list. So I'm going to show you both of these options and kind of filtering those two. We're actually going to dive straight into a demo for this one. So I'm just going to bring down the slides. And here you can see I'm logged into Payroll. I've got my company here, and I do have a few different pay frequencies. So I've got some monthly employees. I also have some weekly employees as well. I've got some different departments set up, so we can see 4 different departments here with people assigned to them, and a few different statuses of employees too. So I do have one leaver showing at the moment, and also somebody on hold. So they're still employed with me, but they're just not getting paid for the next couple of periods. Now I'm going to click on criteria first of all. You'll find this above the employee list, looks like a little funnel icon. And this is the window that I just had on the slides there on that screenshot. So at the top here, you've got different filters, and here you'll be able to decide how you'd like the outline to filter your employees, which I'll come back to later. Underneath here, you've got different tick boxes. So these are going to allow you to choose which pay frequencies or payment methods are going to be shown in the outline as well. And then at the bottom, these relate directly to the employee list. We can exclude certain employees based on their status. So if they're on hold, current year leavers, on holiday, or historical leavers. So this is going to be anyone who's left in a previous tax year. And by default, this is going to be set to exclude historical leavers. Now, if you do want to get those historical leavers records back, maybe you need to check something, run a report on them, for example, you would just need to untick this box, click OK, and we can see I do have an extra employee now showing in my list. Employee number 4, they were a historical leaver. They left back in 2023. So I've got them back now, and I would be able to kind of check in their record or run a report or something if I needed to. So people normally like to use the criteria to tidy up their employee list and only show employees who are still employed and still getting paid as well. So if I open up the criteria again and go at the bottom, I'm just going to exclude all of these. So I'm going to exclude everyone who's not here at the moment or not here at all and kind of not getting paid. If I click OK, I can see that leaves me with only employees whose status is set to OK, so they're still employed and they are going to be getting paid this period. So if you've got a lot of leavers or a lot of people on hold from one period to the next, this is just going to be really good to keep your list nice and tidy and just make sure that you're not accidentally selecting certain employees when you shouldn't be as well. I'm just going to set that back to the default for now and click OK. So that is one way to filter your employee list with that criteria option. Just want to move across to the outline now. So this is the section that you can see to the left of your employee list. If you can't see this currently, you can toggle this on and off just using this icon here. You can also go to View and Outline, and that's going to toggle it on and off in that same way. And the outline has a structure under the All Employees section. So all employees are going to show everyone here in your employee list. If I click this plus icon, we can see it actually then shows the payment frequencies of the employees. So I've got different groups there. I've not got any fortnightly or 4-weekly employees, but as I click in monthly, I can see my monthly employees, and then same with weekly as well. I can actually break this down further as well. So I can click on this plus icon, and there is a second filter in here. So this is now filtering by departments. So any departments that I've got set up. I've got sales, and that's showing the sales employees, service, and then directors as well. I do have 2 directors on my payroll. So as we can see here, it does filter first by payment frequency or payment period, and then by department. And that's actually exactly what I've specified in the criteria. So that is the kind of default way that is filtered there. I can control these filters though, and I can change them depending on what I need. So if I kind of swap these around just to show you the other way. So if we change this first drop down, we'll do department first, for example. And if I then filter by, we'll do pay method. That kind of changes it up there. You'll see it now ungrays these tick boxes as well. So I can now select which pay methods I'd like to be included in the outline. So if I just make sure I'm only doing the ones that I use, so we'll do backs, direct backs, and salary payments, and click OK. Straight away, I can see those changes reflected there in the outline. So first of all, it's now filtering by department. So if I go to directors, for example, see those directors there, and it's then filtering by those different payment methods that I've specified. So this really does depend on your preferences. It depends on how you process payroll. But if you processed a department at a time, this way around might be better for you. Or if you process a pay frequency at a time, so you process your weeklies then your monthlies, for example, that default filter is probably best for you. But you can control that using this kind of top section here of the criteria. And I'm just going to set that back to the default for now. Now, also in the criteria, so like me, I did mention I've got nobody who is a fortnightly paid employee. I've also got nobody who's 4-weekly. Just to kind of, tidy that up even more, what I could do is untick the fortnightly and 4-weekly boxes here and only have monthly and weekly groups in the outline. And we can see that's reflected there in the outline. And I've now got these 2 folders for my employees. And it just means I've got no empty folders there kind of taking up space. So it just keeps that a little bit tidier. So just to recap, that was the criteria option and the outline option that we took a look at there. So in the criteria, at the top, you've got those different filters, which you can kind of determine what gets pulled through into the outline. So do you want to filter by payment period first, so monthly or weekly, or would you prefer to do department, cost center, pay method, etc.? So whatever you would prefer there. In the middle, you can then untick those different pay frequencies or payment methods that you don't need in the outline. So for me, I only have monthly and weekly employees. So I made sure that for the pay frequencies, that was the only folders that were showing. And then at the bottom as well, you do have the option to exclude certain employees based on their status. By default, that is set to hide historical leavers, but you do have the option to hide anyone on hold, on holiday, or current year leavers as well. So a little tip, if you have made somebody a leaver and they've disappeared off your employee list, this is the first place that I would check. So come to the criteria. It might just be that you've hidden the leavers from the list and that's why they've kind of disappeared from that list. But if you do need to get the record back, of course, just untick those boxes there. But that is the criteria and the outline. Something else really, really handy to organise your employees in the outline is employee groups. So these groups can be set up and used to process or report on different sets of employees, and you can decide which employees are in which groups. Key difference with these, and then comparing them to department or cost centres, is that with employee groups, if you need an employee in multiple groups, you absolutely can do that. So they can be assigned to multiple if you wish. Few examples of employee groups that you could make. So you could have like a full-time group for full-time workers. You could have part-time workers. If you've got employees in different schemes, so like a cycle to work scheme, for example, you could have one of them. Or certain employees who get a travel allowance, you can kind of differentiate those in that group too. Loads of different options that you could have for this, really depends on what you need them for. But what it does is it allows you to create bespoke groups to then be able to see and select those employees. You can add any extra payments to them if you need, any different pay elements, run reports for them, or process them without worrying about different employees accidentally being selected. Now, if you do set up any employee groups, these will then appear in the outline, similar to that screenshot there. And I do just want to show you that now. So I do have a couple of employee groups that I would like to set up. So back in Payroll, and it is dead simple to set up these groups. Two different options of where you can do this. So you can either go to your desktop tasks from the bottom left, and you've got the option there for new employee group, which brings up that window. You can also right click in the blank space of the outline here and click new employee group too. So that just brings you to the same place, and this is where you'll be able to set them up. So first one that I'm going to make, I'm just going to call this full-time, and this is going to be for my full-time workers. Little tick box here that you'll notice, so this is just whether you want to specify that this group's available to all users of Payroll, so anyone who logs in with a username and password. I could just have it available for my user, but I don't mind having that available to everyone, so I'll tick that box and then click OK. And now if I go back to the outline and click the little plus next to employee groups, I can see I've now got that full-time group showing there. Now it is blank at the moment when I click on that, so nobody's actually assigned to it just yet, but that would be the kind of next step that I would do. Now before I do assign anyone to this group, I do want to create another one, this time for my part-time workers. And again, I'll specify that's available to everyone and click OK. Perfect, and I've got both of those groups there now, so I'm going to go ahead and assign employees to this. To do this, I'm just going to go back to all employees to show everyone in that all employees section. I'm also going to go to the criteria. I just want to make sure that I've checked and made sure that I'm not kind of excluding anyone on hold, anyone on holiday who might need to be put in the group ready for when they're back to work. And I'll then go ahead and just select the employees that I need. So we'll select the full-time workers first of all. And then I'm then just going to right click and click assign to group. And this then gives me the option to assign them to the groups I've created. So we'll do the full-time employees and click save. I'm then going to swap my selection. I'm going to deselect this lever though, and then right click, assign to group, and these are my part-time workers, so they can go in that group. Perfect. So now, if we just clean my selection, go to the employee groups, when I click on these, I can see I've assigned those employees to the group and they're there ready for me to kind of use in there. So if I did need to process just the full-time workers, I could come into here, select them and kind of do what I needed to do there. And then same with the part-time as well. So if I needed to run a report for them, I could just easily select them, ensuring no one else is selected, and run a report as necessary. Now, I did mention that you can have employees in multiple groups. So I do just want to show you kind of how you would do this as well. Very similar process, but I'm going to create a group for my employees who are in the cycle to work scheme. So let me just name that there. Again, I'll make it available to everyone and click OK. Again, nobody in that just yet, but if I go back to all employees, I'm going to select the employees in that group, right click, assign to group, and then cycle to work. Perfect. There we go. So I've got those there. So employee number 2, for example, they're in the cycle to work scheme group. They're also in the full-time group, so I can assign them to multiple, obviously depending on what kind of needs you've got for the groups there. So it is totally personal preference how you use these groups, depending on how you process your payroll, what your company does, but they're just a great way of keeping that a little bit more organised with your employees. And just a little recap of how you will create them. So you can either go to your desktop tasks, or you can right click on the outline and click New Employee Group. Give that a name and specify whether you'd like it available to all users. And then when you click OK, that's going to appear in the outline for you. You can then select the employees that you'd like in the group, right click them and click Assign to Group, and then of course assign them to that. So super quick process there, dead easy to do. You can find more information as well at the bottom of this slide. But that does bring us nicely onto the next section of the webinar. So this is going to be all about decluttering your pay elements. Now this is another really great way to organise and tidy up your payroll, specifically your company's pay elements. So if you've got a lot of old ones that you don't use, you've got a lot of duplicates maybe, this section is just going to be going through the process of how to remove those pay elements from your employees' records and then ultimately delete them from the company as well to tidy those up. Now, in order for these elements to be deleted from the company, just a couple of requirements that you need to be aware of. So pay elements can't be deleted from an individual employee's record if they've got year-to-date values for the current tax year. They also can't be deleted from the company if they've been assigned to an employee's record. And I'll kind of go through how to work around these requirements as well. Little top tip too, so the beginning of the tax year, so before you've processed anything, that is actually the best time to delete pay elements as there's going to be no year-to-date values attached to them just yet. Now, first thing to go kind of bear in mind before you go and delete a load of pay elements, just to get around these requirements really, is that it is super important that you do some preparation steps and prepare to declutter these pay elements. This means that your data is safe and secure, but also so you know exactly what pay elements that you need to delete. You don't want to be kind of deleting the wrong ones if you don't mean to. So I will be going through these, but first thing that we'd recommend is back up your data. Always important, but especially before you're making any big changes or deleting anything, definitely back up that data. Step 2 would be to clear the criteria, so you don't want any employees excluded. And doing this means that the global change that you're going to do in the steps to kind of remove them can remove the pay element from anyone that needs to in order to then delete it from the company. And then step 3, we do have some reports that we would recommend that you run and print or save. And then also just make sure that you've got any other reports that you might need from previous periods, especially if you are removing some pay elements. So let's take a look at those in the programme. And the first thing I'm going to do is take a backup of my data. So I'm going to go to File and Backup, click Next, and just browse to where I'd like this saved. I would always advise naming your backups appropriately. So I'm just going to call this Payment Declutter 2526, for example, just so I know exactly what that backup is. I'll click Save, Next, and Finish. Perfect, that's been successful. I'm then also going to make sure that all of my employees are in view. So we'll go back to criteria. I do also want to make sure that any historical leavers are in view too, so no tick boxes should be ticked in this bottom section, and I'll click OK. I'm then going to go to the outline and just make sure that I'm in that all employees section, so anyone past and present is going to be showing in this employee list. The last preparation step was those recommended reports. So if I highlight everyone and go to reports, there's 2 which I'd recommend that you run. I do have them favorited here, so it's just these 2 reports. But first of all, the Employee Details Payments Report. This is going to be found in the Employee section. So if I just go into here and scroll down, this is in alphabetical order. There we go, Employee Details Payments. Let's preview this one and let that come up there. This is a really, really good report to do, to run before you go ahead and remove any pay elements. So it's a summary of each of the employees and the pay elements that are assigned to them. You'll also see that you've got a pay reference number next to these pay elements. So this is going to be really handy if you've got duplicate pay elements and you need to know which one's assigned and then which one needs to be deleted. Or if you've got a lot of pay elements in general, it just kind of makes it easier to kind of work through and check the other employees and then judge which elements that you'd like to remove. So that's the employee details payments report. Another one that we'd recommend, this one is in the company section. And if we just go down, this one is called payment types. And this report, again, would recommend to print or save this, is going to show all of the pay elements that you've got set up in the company. So everything you've got set up there, along with how it's set up. So it's got all of the different settings in there too. Y for yes, N for no, in terms of the tick boxes in the settings of the pay element. So this is just going to be really great to check in case you need to correct or replicate any of the pay elements in the future. It shows exactly what each pay element is subject to, and yeah, as I said, exactly how they're set up. So that is the payment types report. But now that I've ran both of those reports, and of course I haven't actually saved them, but you would of course save those or print them, this is just going to help me plan which payments I might want to remove, and also which employees might need new pay elements assigned to them. So definitely print or save these, along with any others that you might need from previous periods. But once you have prepared to declutter, you will be able to then move on to actually removing and deleting these pay elements. So first thing you're going to do is start by removing the pay elements from the employees' records using a global change. What this will do is it will remove it from everyone who's got that pay element in one go, so it just saves you from doing that individually. It saves you a lot of time there, but I will also show you how to do it for an individual as well, just so you've got both of those options. Step 2, so because the pay element now isn't in anyone's record, you will be able to then remove it and delete it from the company itself. And then step 3, once you've decluttered those pay elements, you can then add any new or corrected elements to the employees. So another global change to show you for that one too. So first thing I'm going to do is show you the different pay elements that I've got set up at a company level, so in the company itself. So if I go to the company section and go up to pay elements, this is all of the different pay elements that I've got set up in this company. Now, some of them I don't use anymore, some of them are duplicates, some of them are incorrect. So you will notice I've got 2 bonus pay elements, for example. I've got a couple of different overtimes. I've got a couple of different commission ones too, so I don't need all of these. I've also got this one, which I'm assuming means salary, but I don't use it. It's just kind of there. It might be assigned to a couple of people, but it's not one that I would kind of recommend using for my company, so that one also needs to go. And I know what you're thinking, why not just delete it from here? But taking this one, for example, if I just try to delete it from here, I get that prompt, but if I click yes, I actually get this error message saying that the selected element could not be deleted. This payment type is allocated to an employee. So that's because this pay element is still allocated to at least one employee. So as I mentioned earlier, the pay element first needs to be removed from all of the employees, and then it can be deleted from here at the company level. So with that being said, let's go through these steps. So firstly, I do want to show you how to remove a pay element for an individual employee. And to do this, you're just going to go into the employee's record. You'll go to the employment tab and pay elements. And these are the pay elements that are assigned to the employees. So you can obviously add different ones that you need using the drop down here, but to delete one, you're just going to highlight it. You're going to click the F8 key on your keyboard, and that's going to bring up that prompt for you. So you'll be able to click yes to delete it and remove that from the employee. But I'm just going to go ahead and click no for this. But that's how you do it for an individual. Now, in terms of that global change, this is going to remove it from anyone who might have it. So it'll kind of go through everyone's record and check. And then, yeah, as I said, remove it from anyone who's relevant. So we have already checked that all of the employees are in view. I've got all of my levers and things, anyone on hold, everyone's in that list there and visible. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight everyone and go to tasks and global changes. So this is where you've got all of the options for the different global changes. For this one, I'm going to go to payments and then remove payment. And in here, this brings up a list of all of the different pay elements that I've got set up for the company. It also comes up with their pay reference number too. So because I ran those 2 reports in my preparation steps, and of course I've checked those through, I know which pay elements I need to remove from here. So I need to remove references 2, 3, 11 and 12. So these are all either duplicates or pay elements that are incorrect and that I just don't use anymore. And as you can see, if you do have multiple to delete, you can highlight multiple pay elements in here. I'll click OK. Just get a confirmation message there. So I do want to proceed, and I'll click yes. And I can see a total of 8 people had those records. Had those pay elements, and they've been removed from the record. Perfect. So now that they've been removed from the employees' records, this means that I now can remove them at a company level. So we'll go back to the pay elements. And remember, I did get an error message before. So just using that same pay element, if I now try to delete it, we can see that goes. So it's no longer assigned to anyone. It is now able to be removed. So I'll do the other ones as well. So it was reference number 11, reference number 2, 3 and 2 as well. So you do have to do it one kind of pay element at a time in here just to avoid deleting anything by accident. But that's all of those removed. So it's tidied those up a little bit. And yeah, I don't have any kind of duplicates anymore, which is really good. So that's how to delete pay elements. Of course, more information has been linked on the slides as well. But while we're on the topic of pay elements and kind of adding those to your employees and things, I do want to show you another global change that you could use. So if you did, off the back of this, create new pay elements, corrected ones, and you wanted a quick way to add them, very similar global change that you could use, but again, will save you some time. So you could go to Tasks, Global Changes, Payments, Payments, and then Add Payment. And this time, instead of removing it, you'd be able to select any pay elements that you wanted to add to somebody and then click OK. So just a quick way of adding them too. So this is always a really popular topic around this time of year. It's just kind of decluttering your pay elements there. And I just want to go over a little bit of a recap of how we did that, because I know there was the preparation steps as well. So first thing we did was back up the data, and then we used the criteria to make sure that all of the employees were in view. So those were 2 of those preparation steps. Next one was to print or save the employee details payments report and the payment types reports too. And these will just help you to kind of plan which pay elements you'll need to remove or correct and kind of recreate as well. We then could actually remove them. So we'd remove them from the employees' records using a global change. You can remove it from individuals as well in their record, and you'll just use the F8 key on your keyboard to prompt that delete option there. And then we'd delete the pay elements from the company pay elements screen. So a couple of different steps there. Of course, more information at the bottom of that slide. Now, while we're on pay elements, I do want to mention there are some other things that you can do with this. So I just want to point you in the direction of kind of more further support with this. So I don't have time to kind of go through it all today, but you could have a complete clear out if you wanted to. So you could remove and delete all of the pay elements that you've got, especially if you've got a lot to change or a lot to delete. It might be easier for you to just kind of remove them all and create new ones. You could also reorder pay elements. So if you do want to change the order of the employees' pay elements and how they show on the payslip, for example, even if the elements have year-to-date values, this is possible. So I've linked an article on that too. But yeah, with all of these options, really important, just make sure that you do have a backup and you've done those preparation steps as well before you make any big changes or delete anything. So these links go to the articles on the Help Centre. They'll talk you through all of the different steps of things like this and just have some really great kind of further information on them too. So make sure that you download the handout, click on these articles there, or of course just type them into the Help Centre as well. But that brings us on to the next section of the webinar. So this one is called New Year, New ... And in this, we're going to talk about a few tasks that need to be done at the start of the tax year or are better done at the beginning of the tax year before you process anything. And the first thing is directors. So if you've got any directors on your payroll, then national insurance does need to be calculated differently to normal employees, and that depends on their status. So they could either be annual or pro rata. Now, at the end of the tax year, all of the directors need to have their national insurance calculated on a cumulative basis based on their annual earnings and their annual thresholds. And just a bit of context about how the national insurance is calculated. So for directors on the annual status, you often won't see a national insurance contribution for the first few periods of the tax year, as this actually won't kick in until their cumulative earnings are above the primary threshold, which is £12,570. They might not pay any national insurance until like month 2 or 3. It just depends on when their earnings hits that threshold. So once it kind of reaches that £12,570. The other method that you've got, which is pro rata, this national insurance is calculated instead using the weekly or monthly thresholds, so almost as if they were like a normal employee or a non-director. And then their national insurance is recalculated in the last pay period of the tax year using the annual threshold instead. So the pro rata method, this is suitable for directors who'd prefer to spread their national insurance across the tax year, or who get a more consistent amount of pay each period, like a monthly salary. But by the end of the tax year, no matter what their status is, all directors will have paid the correct national insurance based on their annual earnings and the annual director thresholds. So you might be thinking, why am I bringing this up? But actually, if you do have any directors who want to change the status, they want to change from annual to pro rata to annual, etc., you can only do this at the beginning of the tax year, so you're not able to do it once you've actually processed anything. So if you do have someone switching from annual to pro rata, or you've got someone switching from a director to a non-director, so they are no longer a director, you won't be able to do this until you've reached the new tax year. So even if they have become non-director partway through the year, you will have to wait until the new tax year, and that's just because of the way that their national insurance needs to be calculated. They do have different national insurance rules. So I do want to show you how to find the director status, a couple of other things as well, including how to check the status and change it if you wanted to. So back into payroll. First thing I'm going to do is just change my process dates. I want to change that to my next pay date, which is the 30th of April. Perfect, that's already set to that. Just to be able to show you a couple of different things. So I've got 2 directors on my payroll, one of each, coincidentally to show you, employee number 1 and 2. And if I open up the records and go to the employment tab, on the right hand side I can see their director status. So currently employee number 1 is on the pro rata basis, but if they did want to change to the annual status in the new tax year, maybe their pay pattern or amounts that they've been paid is changing, we could actually just change that in the drop down here. So if I change that to annual, I could do that and save the record. As well, if they were changing and they're becoming a non-director, the beginning of the tax year is when you would do this too. So I could just change their drop down here to non-director and then click save. Now this director, they're actually changing to annual, so I'll just change that back in here. Notice I do get a message just warning about those different national insurance rules, but I'll click OK and click save. So we'll kind of swap them to the other annual, the other director status. Employee number 2 as well, they're actually currently set to the annual, but same again, I'm going to change them. This time I'm going to swap them over to pro rata. So because I'm in the beginning of the tax year now and I've not processed anything, I am able to do this at this point. And as I said, this is the only time that you'll be able to do this for directors. If you've processed any periods in the tax year, the national insurance rules will prevent this change, and yeah, it won't allow you to kind of do that. I also want to show you the effect that both of these changes have had on the employee's national insurance. So I've already set my process date. We're actually going to go ahead and open up Enter Payments. Here we go. So just to make it easy today, both of these directors get paid the same amount. So they're both getting £3,333 per month. If we just check that. Oh, that one's changed. There we go. So both getting the same amount per month. But I just want to kind of show you the national insurance contributions for them. So employee number 1, this person is on the annual status. Notice their national insurance contributions are 0, so they won't pay any national insurance until their cumulative earnings reach the primary threshold. So in this case, if they keep getting paid this kind of £3,000, they won't actually pay any national insurance probably until around tax month 4. So that is a normal thing to see there for an annual director. But on to the next employee, so same salary this time, thereabouts, so around £3,000. But notice we do have national insurance contributions for this employee, for this director. So because they're on the pro rata method, their national insurance is calculated, in this case, using the monthly tables. If this employee is paid the same amount each period, they will have a consistent amount of national insurance through the year. So that's just kind of down to preference if they prefer to pay the national insurance that way. Now, once you've updated a period in the new tax year, certain changes can't be made. So if I just quickly update the records for these employees, just to kind of show you what I mean. So I'll just whiz through this wizard, click next and finish, and go back to their records. So the pay is now updated for April. And if I came back to the record and tried to change the director status, so we'll go from annual back to pro rata, notice I do get this error message. So it's not allowing this change. National insurance legislation is kind of preventing that. Same with switching to a non-director as well. So there we go. Unable to do that for national insurance purposes. So just to kind of show you. So if you do get that message, it's just because you're not doing that at the correct time of year. Yeah, more information can be found on the slides, but beginning of the tax year is when you'll be able to do that. So something else that's better to be done at the beginning of the tax year is actually changing an employee's pay frequency. And this is because you can't have different tax periods overlap. Whereas if you try to change the pay frequency during the tax year, it's sometimes difficult to figure out those overlapping periods, especially if you're changing from something like weekly to monthly, for example. So with this as well, the start of the tax year is going to be better to do this. No chance of those overlapping periods, so it just makes it a much easier process to do. Now, I just want to say it can be done during the tax year, but a little bit more of a difficult process, a couple of extra steps to do in terms of just figuring out the tax periods and making sure that there's no overlap. But I do have some really great resources to show you shortly if you do need to change mid-tax year. And in terms of actually changing the employee's pay frequency, dead easy to do so. You're just going to change a drop down in the employee record and kind of do it in there. As well, if you do have multiple employees who you need to change, or even all of your employees, you do also have the option of a global change to do this for everyone at once. So if we go back to payroll, and I'm just going to go to the outline, we can see I've got those monthly and weekly groups here. So let's say that I wanted to change one of my weekly employees to monthly. I could go into the weekly section, I'll open up this employee and go to employment. And it is just a case of changing their pay frequency in here. So I could use this drop down, change them to monthly, little confirmation message. So I would click yes and click save. And this would just mean that I'd be able to process this employee as monthly from the first period of the tax year. Now let's say there was a few employees I wanted to change from monthly to weekly. So if we go this time to the monthlies, and let's change employee number 6 and 7, so they want to change over to weekly. If you've got multiple people, you can use a global change. So we'll go to tasks, we'll go back to global changes, but this time we're going to go down to assign employees in new, and we're going to go to pay period. We're going to change them to weekly, so change that on the drop down there, and then click OK. Again, you do get a confirmation message with the global change. Do we want to proceed? We'll click yes. And we can see those 2 employees were successfully updated. So it is dead easy to do since there was no processing and no overlapping periods. But just to kind of show you a different scenario, so I do already have a monthly employee who is updated for April, so their pay has been updated. I just want to show you something that you might come across when you're changing the pay frequency. So I'll open up the record And if I go to employment and try to change this, so if we change them to weekly, for example, we just get a message asking, do we want to do this? So yes. You'll see I am actually able to do that no problem. So even though they've been processed, I can actually change that in the record. But when it comes to going to enter payments, so if I try to process them, their next pay, for example, is weekly, we'll change my process date to tax month 5. And this will be the first period that they're going to be updated as weekly. That's the first time I'd like to pay them. I'll click OK. I'll just grab them again. And if I go to enter payments, you'll see I now get this message. So that's because tax month 1 overlaps with tax week 5, so it is an overlapping period, and an employee can only be paid once per tax period. So I won't be able to get past this point and pay them again. So this is why it's important to change the pay frequency at the beginning of the tax year. You can get around it, but it might just be the case that you won't be able to pay your employees for a certain length of time because of those overlapping periods. So this message will come up for different reasons, including a change of pay frequency. So we do have some really great guides on lengthening or shortening an employee's pay frequency on the Help Centre. I just really want to quickly show you this help article. Got some really good information on there. So in my case, I was trying to shorten a pay frequency, so going from monthly to weekly, for example. This article will show you kind of, and just help you to understand those overlapping periods. So for me, the employee was paid in month 1 as monthly, so that was their last monthly period updated. And this just lets me know that if that was the case, the first time that I can pay them as weekly would be tax week 6. So that just stops that overlapping period. So there would be a little gap of pay there. In tax week 5, they would receive no pay. But this is just a really good way of kind of checking through and kind of judging when you'd be able to next pay the employee if you did change their pay frequency. You've also got monthly to fortnightly, monthly to 4 weekly, etc. So different tables kind of helping you there. And as I said, if you do lengthen the pay frequency instead, we do have a different article there. Now that is linked on these slides, as well it is available on the Help Centre too. So I'm aware that we're running out of time. One last section that I want to go through with you, though this one is just kind of more advice really, a couple of different reminders. I would like to move on to this. So very important to look after your data all year round, but especially over year end and kind of changing things like we've been mentioning today. So these are important all year round. And first thing that I want to mention in this section is optimizing your data. Now, if you came to our year-end Part 1 webinar, you will recall us mentioning this. Dead quick process to do, and it's something that you can do whenever you like. And it just helps to kind of keep your data in the best condition, really. So it reduces the size of your backups and just helps to maintain organized, error-free data. Now, we would recommend running this each time you open the program. So when you're entering your username and password, there is an optimize button, as you can see there on that screenshot. And it's just a case of clicking on that and waiting for the process to complete. So let me show you this in the program. As I say, it's normally done as you're logging in, but because I'm already logged in, I'm going to instead go to File and Open Company. And you do have the optimize button here. Now you can't optimize the company that you're currently logged into, so I would get an error message if I tried to optimize the one I'm currently logged into, which I can see with this asterisk symbol. But if I just pick another company and click optimize, you can see Payroll does that hard work for you. So it goes through and just helps to kind of clear up your data there. And we can see you do get a message to confirm when that's been done. So it just helps to keep your data in the best condition there. So that is something that I would recommend that you incorporate into any like housekeeping tasks that you might have. You don't have to do it every time you log in. I would recommend it, but if you don't want to do that, that's fine. But at least every now and again, definitely worth doing. You do want to make sure that your data is looked after. And more information can be found at the bottom of this slide. So that is one thing that we'd recommend to look after the data. But what happens if something goes wrong? So if your data becomes damaged or corrupted, and you kind of need to recover that data back into Payroll, what would you do in this situation? So that is where backups are important. We do talk about these a lot, so I'm not going to take up too much time on these, but you are prompted to back up your data at various points in the payroll. It's usually before big changes are made, so before you run the pension assessment, update the records, or close payroll. Those are really good opportunities to take a backup. But if you don't want to take one of those points, you do also have the option of just going to File and Backup and kind of, backing up that data there. Now, something else we'd recommend is backing up onto something external. So if you've got like an external hard drive or a USB stick, or you use like a SharePoint or OneDrive at your company, that's going to be really, really great, just as like an extra place to store that backup, just in case anything did happen to your computer. You've still got the backup there saved if you ever need to recover that. And just a little reminder of where you'll back up your data. So you would just go to File and Backup, and that's going to guide you through that wizard. So you've got any recent backups that have been taken, but you'll click Next, choose the files that you want backed up there, click Next, and then just click Browse. Name the backup as well, so I'd always advise naming that appropriately just so you can help differentiate it from other backups that you might have taken. And then you would just click Save, Next, and Finish to complete that process. But that is how to back up your data. And I would also recommend just leaving those default files highlighted as well, just to make sure that, as much as kind of, and if everything is backed up, really, all of the files that you're going to need. The only other thing that I do want to mention, if you do have like custom reports, for example, or you've edited reports and things like that in Payroll, I would also make sure that you highlight the report files in this option, just to make sure that you've got those backed up from time to time. But yeah, otherwise just work through that wizard and save that there. Now the time it takes to back up as well, this can vary depending on how big your database is, as well as some other factors. But optimizing your data, what we just talked about before, this can actually help to significantly reduce the time that it takes to back up. So definitely make sure that you incorporate that too. But that does bring us to the end of the content that we've got planned for today. I do want to talk about some further support before we kind of end the webinar. I am aware that I've run over by a couple of minutes, so thank you to everyone who's stayed with us here. But as I go through this further support, Tina is going to continue answering your questions in the Q&A. So if you do have any last minute questions, just make sure you get those in now. But first thing I do want to mention is upcoming webinars. So Payroll year-end webinars are kind of over for the time being, but if you did miss those, we do have the recordings available to watch. You can click that on the handout or go to sage.co.uk/webinars to view all of those previous recordings. But we've got loads coming up in April, so we've got getting your payroll done, month-end tasks if you need a bit of a hand with that, report favourites and selections as well, and variance reporting. We also have different webinars on the Sage HR Showcase series and our next HR advice as well, which is on redundancy, pay and restructure. So definitely worth getting yourself signed up for those. We would love to see you there. They're welcome. Everyone's welcome to those. We do also have the Sage Help Centre, so you can search our knowledge base here. You can access different support guides, demonstration videos. We do have a webinar section there where you can access those recordings that I mentioned. And should you need to get in contact with us, so if you need technical support, for example, you do have those contact options there too. So that's just sage.co.uk/help. And last thing is Sage University, so this is sageu.com. Here you'll be able to set up a free account and you can access different e-learning courses, bite-sized learning courses too, and also earn certification for the training that you do. And this could be on Sage 50 Payroll, so a great way to expand your knowledge there. But if you do have any other products with us, so Sage 50 accounts, for example, there are training courses and things on those too. So just a handful of the amazing support that we've got available to you all. But that has officially brought us to the end of the webinar for Payroll Spring Clean. So I just want to take the time to thank you for your time. Hopefully you've learned a couple of tips and can bring these into the new tax year with you. But yeah, on behalf of me, enjoy the rest of your week. Would love to see you on another webinar very soon. And from me and Tina, it is goodbye for now.